The morning sun crept over the Chicago skyline, its golden rays slicing through the haze that clung to the West Loop. Down below, the streets buzzed with life-honking cabs, the clatter of delivery trucks, and the rich aroma of fresh bagels wafting from a nearby shop. Jake Miller pedaled his beat-up delivery bike through it all, the chain rattling with every turn. At 25, he was lean and weathered, his hands calloused from gripping handlebars, his face marked by a tired grin that hid the strain of 2 years at Russo's Delivery Co. The job kept him moving, dodging pedestrians and weaving past yellow cabs, but the paycheck barely covered his rent in a cramped studio on the South Side. He loved the city's pulse, though. It was home. That Tuesday felt heavier than usual. The air carried a chill, sharp against his skin as he rolled into the warehouse. The concrete floor echoed with the shuffle of boots and the hum of overhead lights. Jake parked his bike, wiping sweat from his brow, and clocked in with a quick nod to Mike, a grizzled driver with a crooked smile. "Rough night?" Mike asked, tossing him a granola bar. Jake shrugged. "Same old. Just trying to keep up." The warehouse was a chaotic hive crate stacked high, workers shouting over the noise and the faint smell of cardboard filling the air. But today, a tension hung thick, like a storm brewing. Tony Russo stormed in, his presence cutting through the clamor. The boss was a stocky guy in his 40s, with slicked-back hair and a gold watch that gleamed under the fluorescence. He ruled with a voice like gravel, barking orders that made the crew flinch. "Miller, late again, huh?" Tony's eyes narrowed, locking onto Jake. The room went quiet, and a few guys smirked. Jake's stomach dropped. He'd been 5 minutes late. A flat tire on Division Street had slowed him down, but Tony didn't care. What's the excuse this time? Chasing pigeons? The crew chuckled, and Jake felt heat creep up his neck. He opened his mouth to explain, but Tony cut him off. "Get those packages moving, slacker, or you're out." The insult landed hard, public and sharp, and Jake forced a nod, swallowing the lump in his throat. He grabbed his first load boxes of electronics bound for downtown and hit the road. The wind whipped past, cool against his face, but his mind churned. This wasn't new. Tony rode him hard, scheduling double shifts with no overtime, docking pay for lost packages that weren't his fault. Last week, the boss had mocked him in front of a client at a drop-off, calling him a delivery clown, while the guy in the suit laughed. Jake's hands tightened on the handlebars. He was used to the grind late nights, sore legs, the ache of pushing through, but the humiliation dug deeper each time. Back at the warehouse, he unloaded his bike, catching his breath near the break room. Over by the office, Tony leaned against a desk, phone pressed to his ear. His voice was low, smug. "Yeah, cook the books IRS won't notice. Keep the cash flowing." Jake froze mid-step, the words sinking in. Was Tony talking about tax evasion? His pulse quickened. He glanced around. Mike was hauling a crate, oblivious, while Lisa, a new hire, sorted packages nearby. Jake pretended to adjust his helmet, ears straining. Tony laughed, a cold sound that echoed. "Those idiots won't figure it out. Just keep the returns quiet." Returns? Jake's mind raced. He'd seen crates marked "returned" being reloaded earlier, no paperwork in sight. His gut twisted. Maybe this was bigger than a bad boss. The day wore on, deliveries piling up under the midday sun. Jake darted through traffic, the city a blur of honks and crosswalks. Back at the warehouse, Tony's temper flared again. During a break, Jake sat with a lukewarm coffee, watching the boss strut around. Tony flashed a key fob, grinning. "Check out my new ride, Miller. You'll never afford this stick to your rusty bike." The crew laughed, and Jake forced a tight smile, but inside, anger simmered. He noticed something else. Two guys loading those returned crates into a van, no logs, no questions. His chest tightened. Tony wasn't just a jerk. This could be a racket. He headed out for his next run, the weight of that thought clinging to him. The Chicago streets swallowed him up, skyscrapers towering, trains rumbling overhead. Jake pedaled harder, the rhythm steadying his nerves. What if he was right? What if Tony was skimming cash, dodging taxes, using the crew as cover? The idea was wild, but the pieces fit. He remembered a news report about a delivery scam in Detroit, owners jailed for fraud. Could that be happening here? His mind spun with possibilities. If he dug deeper, he might prove it. But if he was wrong, Tony would crush him. The question hung heavy as he delivered his last package, the city lights flickering to life. What would he do next? The Chicago afternoon sun beat down on the West Loop, turning the asphalt into a shimmering haze as Jake pedaled back to the warehouse. His legs ached from the morning's grind, but the real weight pressed on his chest. Tony's words, "Stick to your rusty bike," echoed in his head, fueling a quiet anger. He parked his bike, the chain clanking against the frame, and stepped inside. The warehouse buzzed with activity crates being stacked, radios crackling with dispatch calls. Mike waved from across the room, but Jake's focus stayed sharp. He needed to figure out what he'd overheard. Tony strutted by, clipboard in hand, his gold watch catching the light. "Miller, double shift today. Got a rush order for the loop," he barked, not meeting Jake's eyes. The crew groaned, but Jake nodded, grabbing his load. Double shifts meant no break, no pay bump, just more sweat. He hit the road again, the city's pulse a blur of honks and shouts. On a quiet street, he pulled over, wiping his brow. The cook the books line replayed. Tax evasion? Bribery? His mind raced. He'd seen those unmarked crates, maybe they were part of it. Back at the warehouse, Tony's humiliation kicked up a notch. During a delivery handoff, a package slipped, and Tony pounced. "Clumsy idiot!" He yelled, loud enough for the whole crew to hear. "Can't even hold a box, Miller. Stick to flipping burgers." The guy snickered, and Jake's face burned. He muttered an apology, but Tony wasn't done. "You're lucky I keep you around, slacker. Step it up or you're gone." The public jab stung, and Jake clenched his fists, forcing a breath. He'd worked late nights, covered for sick coworkers, yet this was his reward. Later, by the break room, Lisa leaned over. "Don't let him get to you," she whispered, her voice kind. "He's a jerk to everyone." Jake forced a smile. "Yeah, but it's getting old." She nodded, glancing at Tony schmoozing with a client. "He's been weird lately, always on those shady calls." Jake's gut tightened. Maybe he wasn't imagining it. That night, his shift stretched past 10 p.m. Tony docked his pay for a late return, smirking as he handed over the check. "Learn to manage time, kid," he said, walking off. Jake stared at the amount, half what he'd earned. Anger boiled. He was being exploited, mocked, and now cheated. The next day, the pattern repeated. Tony scheduled him for a 12-hour shift, ignoring his protests. "Toughen up, Miller," he shouted, slapping the stack of orders on the table. The crew watched, some shaking their heads, others avoiding his gaze. Jake pedaled out, the city lights blurring as exhaustion set in. He thought of his mom, struggling on her own, relying on his help. This job was his lifeline, but Tony was draining it dry. During a break, he overheard Tony again, something about moving the returns tonight. Jake's heart pounded. He had to dig deeper, but doubt crept in. What if he got caught? What if Tony fired him on the spot? The question lingered as he rode into the night, the weight of his choice growing heavier. The next morning, a gray fog rolled over Chicago, cloaking the West Loop in a damp chill. Jake rolled into the warehouse, his bike creaking under the strain of another long day ahead. His body ached, but his mind was sharper now, honed by the anger and suspicion building inside. Tony stood near the office, barking at a new hire, his voice a constant growl. Jake clocked in, nodding to Mike, who handed him a coffee. "You look beat, man," Mike said. Jake shrugged. "Tony's killing me with these shifts." Mike lowered his voice. "Watch your back." He's been twitchy lately. Jake grabbed his first load, the boxes heavier than usual. As he sorted them, he spotted those returned crates again stacked near the back. No labels, no logs. His pulse quickened. During a delivery run, he pulled into an alley, checking his phone. A quick search on tax evasion showed signs, fake invoices, unlogged returns. It matched what he'd seen. Back at the warehouse, he decided to ask. Approaching Tony, he kept it casual. "Hey boss, those returned crates, shouldn't we log them?" Tony's eyes narrowed. "Mind your business, Miller. You're here to deliver, not play accountant." The rejection stung, but Jake pressed on. "Just noticed they're piling up." "Thought it might." Tony cut him off, his laugh cold. "What, you think you're smart now? Stick to your bike, kid." "You wouldn't get it." The crew turned, smirking, and Jake felt the heat rise. "I'm just saying it looks off," he muttered. Tony stepped closer, his voice a growl. "Off? You're off if you keep this up. Drop it, or you're done." The threat hung heavy, and Jake backed off, his heart pounding. He'd been mocked, shut down, and now warned. That afternoon, the truth started unraveling. While dropping off a package, Jake overheard Tony on a call. "Yeah, move the crates tonight, cash drop at the docks." "Keep it quiet." His stomach dropped. Bribery? He slipped into the bathroom, heart racing. He had to prove it. That night, during a late shift, he lingered near the office, pretending to organize. Tony was on another call, distracted. Jake spotted a ledger on the desk numbers didn't add up. He snapped a photo with his phone, hands shaking. Footsteps approached. Tony stormed in. "What are you doing, Miller?" Jake stammered. "Just checking my route." Tony's glare was ice. "Snooping, huh? One more move, and you're out, got it?" The ride home was a blur, the city lights streaking past. Jake's mind spun. He had evidence partial, but real. The ledger showed discrepancies, and the call confirmed the cash drop. But Tony's threat loomed large. If he acted, he'd lose his job. If he didn't, the racket might grow. He parked his bike, staring at the photo. Doubt gnawed at him. What if Tony had connections to bury this? What if he ended up on the street? The risk was huge, but the injustice burned hotter. He had to decide, stay silent or fight back. The question echoed as he climbed the stairs to his apartment, the night closing in. The Chicago night pressed down on the West Loop, the warehouse lights flickering against the damp air as Jake pedaled back from his last delivery. His legs burned, but his mind raced faster. The photo of the ledger burned a hole in his pocketproof of Tony's scheme, shaky but real. He parked his bike, the chain clanking softly, and stepped inside. The place was quieter now, most of the crew gone, leaving only the hum of a radio and the shuffle of Tony's boots. Jake's heart thudded. He had to act, but the risk loomed large. Tony was in the office, door ajar, counting cash from a locked drawer. Jake lingered nearby, pretending to check his routes. Then he heard it, Tony on the phone. "Docks at midnight. Move the crates, cash is ready." Jake's breath caught. The bribe was happening tonight. He slipped his phone out, hitting record, and edged closer. Tony's voice grew clearer. "Yeah, the IRS won't touch us with this cover. Keep the returns off the books. Jackpot." But the floor creaked. Tony spun around, eyes blazing. "Miller, what the hell are you doing?" Jake froze, phone still rolling. "Just grabbing my log," he stammered, but Tony wasn't buying it. The boss lunged, snatching the phone. "Snooping, huh? You're done." He scrolled, saw the recording, and his face darkened. "You little rat." Tony grabbed Jake's collar, shoving him against a crate. The impact knocked the wind out of him, pain shooting through his shoulder. "Delete this, or you're out, and I'll make sure no one hires you." The threat was real, his grip tight. Jake's mind spun. He could delete it, save his job, but the injustice, the exploitation, the mockery flashed before him. "No," he gasped, shoving back. Tony swung, a glancing blow to Jake's cheek, and the crew's laughter echoed in his memory. Rage fueled him. He broke free, grabbing his phone as it fell. He bolted for the door, Tony yelling behind, "You're fired, Miller. I'll ruin you." Jake didn't stop, pedaling into the night, blood trickling from his lip. The city blurred, L trains roaring, streetlights streaking. He had the recording, but at what cost? His job was gone. He pulled over, panting, and played it back. The evidence was gold, tax evasion, bribery, all on tape. But Tony's connections could bury him. He thought of his mom, her worried calls about bills. If he leaked this, he'd be homeless. Yet the anger burned hotter. He had to fight. The question loomed, could he survive the fallout? The docks awaited, and time was slipping away. The midnight air stung Jake's face as he crouched near the Chicago docks, the city's skyline a distant glow. The recording pulsed in his phone, a lifeline and a curse. He'd ditched his uniform, wearing a hoodie to blend in, his cheek still throbbing from Tony's hit. The docks were alive with hushed activity vans unloading crates, men in shadows exchanging cash. Jake's hands shook as he filmed from a distance, capturing the bribe in action. Tony's voice cut through the night, directing the drop. "Move it quick, cops won't care with the payoff." Jake zoomed in, heart pounding, until a flashlight swept his way. He ducked, breath held, as footsteps approached. A burly guy muttered, "Thought I saw someone." They moved on, and Jake exhaled, pocketing his phone. He had enough video, audio, the ledger photo. The next step was clear. He pedaled to a 24-hour diner, ordered coffee, and called Channel 7 News. "I've got proof of a delivery scan," he said, voice low. The reporter, a brisk woman named Claire, listened, promising to meet at dawn. Jake hung up, exhaustion hitting. He'd crossed a line. Tony would come for him. Dawn broke over Lake Michigan, casting a pale light as Jake met Claire in a park. He handed over the evidence, explaining the exploitation, the threats. She nodded, eyes wide. This could blow wide open. By noon, the story hit Russo's Delivery Co., under investigation for tax evasion and bribery. Jake's face wasn't shown, but Tony knew. A call came, Tony's voice venomous. "You're dead, Miller. I'll bury you." Jake blocked the number, but fear crept in. He crashed at a friend's place, the news buzzing on TV. Protesters gathered outside the warehouse, demanding justice. The fallout was swift. Cops raided the docks, seizing crates and cash. Tony tried to spin it, claiming Jake framed him, but the evidence held. Jake watched from afar, relief mixing with dread. His job was gone, his savings thin. He thought of his mom again, her voice in his head. "You did right, Jake," Claire called, offering an interview. "People want to hear your story." He hesitated. Exposure meant safety risks, but silence felt wrong. The community rallied online petitions, donations trickling in. A local union reached out, promising support. Jake felt a shift. The catharsis was starting, but the cost lingered. Could he rebuild from this? The answer waited in the days ahead. The morning sun filtered through the blinds of Jake's friend's cramped apartment in Chicago, the clock ticking past 8:38 a.m. on Saturday, October 18th, 2025. He sat on the worn couch, the TV muted but flashing news updates about Russo's Delivery Co. Cops had hauled Tony away last night, his smug grin replaced by handcuffs as cameras rolled. Jake rubbed his sore cheek, the bruise a fading badge of the fight. The story had exploded. Channel 7's report racked up thousands of views online, with hashtags like #DeliveryHero trending. His phone buzzed with messages, mostly support, but some threats too. He felt a mix of relief and dread. Claire called, her voice brisk. "Jake, you're a local legend. The union wants to meet you." He agreed, nerves jittering. At a downtown cafe, Union Rep Mark greeted him with a firm handshake. "You took down a crook, kid. We're offering a job, better pay, regular hours." Jake blinked, stunned. "Why me?" Mark smiled. "You showed guts. Plus, we need voices like yours." The offer felt like a lifeline. He thought of his mom, her pride if she knew. But guilt gnawed too. He'd cost coworkers jobs, even if Tony was the real villain. Later, he visited the warehouse site. Protesters had dwindled, but a few lingered, holding signs, "Justice for workers." A woman approached, tears in her eyes. "My husband worked here. You saved us from that mess." Jake nodded, humbled. Back at the apartment, he reflected. Tony's arrest was justice, but the journey had scarred him. He'd lost sleep, faced violence, risked everything. Yet the community's support donations, messages lifted him. He called his mom, voice cracking. "I did it, Ma. It's over." She sobbed. "I'm so proud." The union job started Monday. Jake trained others, sharing tips on spotting red flags. One night, he stood before a small crowd, speaking haltingly. "I was just a delivery guy, but I couldn't stay quiet. We all deserve better." Applause followed, and he felt a shift. Redemption wasn't just Tony's downfall. It was his own rise. He saved his first paycheck, planning to visit his mom. The past week's chaos faded, replaced by purpose. But a nagging thought lingered. Could he trust this new start, or would old enemies resurface? The answer waited in the days ahead. The Chicago autumn painted the West Loop in shades of orange and gold. A crisp breeze rustling through the trees as Jake pedaled to his new job at the union office. It was mid-November 2025, 6 weeks since Tony's arrest, and the city felt different, lighter, somehow. He wore a clean jacket, his delivery days of fading memory, and carried a notebook filled with ideas. The union gig paid steady, with weekends off, and he'd sent half his last check to his mom in Gary, Indiana. She'd cried over the phone, calling him her hero. Jake smiled, but the past still lingered. At the office, Mark handed him a schedule. "You're leading a training session today, worker rights basics." Jake nodded, nerves fluttering. He'd never taught before. The room filled with delivery drivers, some from Russo's old crew. Lisa waved, grinning. "Good to see you, boss." He chuckled, starting the session. "I was you guys once, overworked, underpaid. Let's learn how to spot trouble." They listened, nodding, and Jake felt a surge of pride. After, a guy named Tom approached. "Thanks, man. Tony screwed us all. You gave us a voice." Jake shook his hand, humbled. Home life shifted too. He moved to a better apartment, a one-bedroom with a view of Lake Michigan. One evening, he invited Lisa and Mike over. They shared pizza, laughing about old warehouse days. "Remember Tony's pigeon line?" Mike said, and they roared. But the mood softened. Lisa asked, "How'd you keep going?" Jake paused, staring at his coffee. "Anger, mostly. And knowing I wasn't alone." They raised their cups, a silent toast. He thought of the threats, the bruises, and how they'd forged this moment. The union grew his influence. He spoke at community meetings, urging workers to unionize. One night, a local paper ran his story. Delivery guy turns hero. His mom framed it, sending a photo. Jake teared up, realizing he'd rebuilt more than a job. He mentored new hires, teaching them to document abuses, his own scars a guide. Yet, a quiet fear nagged. What if Tony's allies struck back? The question faded as he watched the sunset, the city's lights sparking hope. His growth was real, but the future held unknowns. The Chicago winter chill settled over the city on December 15, 2025. Snow dusting the West Loop as a crowd gathered outside the Union Hall. It was a special night, a community event to honor Jake Miller, the delivery guy who'd toppled a corrupt empire. String lights twinkled above, casting a warm glow on the faces below. Jake stood near the stage, his breath visible in the cold, a mix of nerves and pride swelling in his chest. His mom had flown in from Gary, her eyes shining as she hugged him tight. "You did it, son," she whispered. Mark took the mic, his voice booming. Tonight, we celebrate Jake Miller, proof that one voice can change everything. The crowd cheered, clapping as Jake stepped up. He adjusted his tie, unused to the formality, and cleared his throat. "I was just a guy on a bike, pushed around by a boss who thought he owned me," he began. "But I couldn't stay quiet. Tony Russo exploited us all, and I had to fight back." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some nodding, others wiping tears. "This isn't just my win, it's ours." The news had sealed Tony's fate. His trial ended last week, a guilty verdict on tax evasion and bribery charges. He faced years in prison. His empire crumbled, and the company was sold, its profits now funding worker support programs. Jake's evidence had sparked a citywide crackdown on delivery scams. Claire from Channel 7 filmed the event, her camera catching the moment Jake's mom pinned a community hero badge on his jacket. The crowd roared, and Lisa shouted, "That's our guy." Jake grinned, the weight of the past lifting. After, he mingled, shaking hands with union members and locals. A kid handed him a drawing, a bike with a cape saying, "You're my hero." Jake ruffled the boy's hair, moved. With his mom, he walked to the diner where it all started, now a symbol of his journey. Over coffee, she asked, "What's next?" He sipped, thinking. "Keep helping workers, maybe start a foundation." She smiled, proud. The night ended with a quiet walk, snow crunching underfoot. Jake looked at the city lights, murmuring, "Power doesn't win, people do." If this story touched you, subscribe for more tales of everyday heroes. Sometimes the underdog's roar changes the world.